Have you ever wanted to start your own podcast? I record and publish podcasts on a platform called Spotify for Podcasters, and I absolutely love it. Essentially, you can upload from your phone or computer, and it distributes to every platform that plays podcasts. They support video podcasts, and you can make money on the platform with ads or even podcast subscriptions, something that has made my life so much easier as a podcaster. So if you're interested, I highly recommend you give it a try. You can download the Spotify for Podcast app, or go to spotify.com/podcasters to get started on your podcast today. Welcome to the Chat GPT podcast. I'm your host, Jaden Schaefer. Each episode, we dive into the latest developments in the exciting field of artificial intelligence, exploring its applications and potential impacts on our daily lives. As you know, Chat GPT has some pretty massive implications for virtually every industry. It is an incredibly revolutionary language model. So today we want to talk a little bit about how Chat GPT will change the world. What are some of the impacts we're going to see from this technology? What are some of the uses? And I guess what are the biggest uses that we're anticipating and the impact of those uses? So one of the key ways that ChatGPT is really set to change the world is by improving the quality of communication. So the model's ability to generate text that is similar to human writing makes it ideal for use in chatbots, customer service applications, and virtual assistants. So this is going to result in improved communication between companies and their customers, in my opinion, and making the customer service experience a lot more efficient and personal, right? Because what ChatGPT is so good at is beyond just a question, it's looking at the context of that question and the context of perhaps a company and what they do. So chatbots can also be used to provide information and support to individuals in real time, which can save time and reduce the need for human intervention, aka ChatGPT, chatbots built on the ChatGPT technology that companies are using are available 24/7. And if they're able to give some level of accuracy in their information, that's an incredibly valuable tool to have that helps companies out a lot, but also helps people out a lot, right? Trying to get their answers in a timely manner 24/7 is pretty valuable. So another area where ChatGPT is set to have, I would say, a pretty major impact is the field of content creation. This is one of the first things I was using it for when I discovered a content writer. So as we know, the model can generate articles, stories, poetry, pretty much anything. And it allows content creators to produce pretty high quality text in a fraction of the time that it would normally take to write it manually. So I predict that this is going to lead to an increase in the volume of content being produced, as well as the decrease in cost and time required to produce it. Now, some people have differences of opinions on if this is a good or bad thing. But nonetheless, that is one of the big impacts that will happen. Another area is in the education sector. ChatGPT is set to make some pretty big impacts on how that whole thing goes. We know that a lot of people are grappling with that. New York is trying to ban it in schools. Teachers are worried that it's going to be used to write essays. Recently, I was actually looking at a tweet online that made me a little bit less concerned about that from a teacher that said, we're just getting started on the semester and I've already received a ChatGPT written response essay, and he was saying that it's actually pretty easy to spot ChatGPT written essays as long as you're actively using the service yourself. You can kind of see patterns in how it writes things and also mistakes it makes, and especially when it comes to dates, times, amounts of money, right? It's not good at the whole numbers thing, and so if you can fact check an article in addition to understanding that it sounds pretty AI written and find that there's some errors there, it's pretty obvious. So as far as education goes, I'm actually not in favor of banning ChatGPT from education. I don't think that makes much sense. I mean, people are going to find a way around it, VPNs, whatever, eventually. But what I will say is I think it's very similar to the calculator. When the calculator was invented, I'm sure math classes were mad, wanted to ban it for math class, it's cheating, etc. But eventually they just settled on, letting you use only certain types of calculators and only at certain times to make sure that you were still learning what you needed to. I think that's pretty practical as people don't really need to learn really complex math all in their head. So I would say that It's really being used for some powerful things in education. It's going to help people to learn. It's going to make education more accessible and convenient. And I think it's going to improve outcomes for students around the world. Another area that is really exciting is the field of medicine. The model can be used to generate medical reports, diagnoses, and treatment plans, which will make healthcare experience more effective and personal. So the model can also be used to provide information and support to patients, helping them better understand their conditions and treatment. Now, for people that are, crying foul or, pretty much saying that it's going to be dangerous because it's going to give inaccurate medical predictions, I would point you to the fact that my wife personally has self-diagnosed herself with about 20 diseases after reading WebMD articles. So I don't think this is very different. And in fact, it's actually been proven that it is pretty accurate when you train it specifically on medical journals. I think Stanford made one called PubMed GPT. And essentially they trained it on all medical journals, and you could say things like a middle-aged woman between this age and this age from this ethnicity is suffering from these conditions. What is a likely outcome? And it gave a likely outcome. And I think they did this for a bunch of people. They went and tested it. Doctors typically suggested one thing, and in the Chat GPT or in the GPT response for that specifically trained model, it said many people will think it is this, but because of this reason, it's more likely to be this. And it was actually accurate with that. They've also used it to accurately help predict Alzheimer's and a lot of other things. So it's not perfect. Obviously, this thing's pretty new technology, but going into the future, especially on models that are specifically trained on very specific areas in medicine, right? Like imagine a model trained on every piece of data in the, heart health area, being able to help diagnose different heart problems, I think could be very powerful. So that's playing out, but I think we're kind of getting started and seeing the beginning of that. Another field is obviously business. This is a really powerful tool for automating repetitive tasks within companies, freeing up employees' time to focus on more important and creative work. And this is going to result in increased efficacy and productivity across, I think, all departments inside of corporations, all administrative tasks, marketing, research. This is really going to help people to stay ahead of the competition if they're leveraging a lot of these AI tools using Chat GPT. Finally, I think Chat GPT has potential to change the way we interact with technology. The model's ability to understand and generate human-like text means that it can be used to create more natural and intuitive interfaces for technology. So I think this is going to make it easier for people to interact with technology in a lot of different areas and will help increase adoption and accessibility because of that. Just to wrap up, I think this is a technology that's going to impact many, many areas. We've obviously just covered a few of them, but it's going to be cool to stay on top of this and follow up and see how this continues to be developed and improved. And I think we're going to see some pretty incredible innovations that will have some pretty big impacts on the world. You've been listening to the Chat GPT podcast. Make sure to rate us wherever you listen to your podcasts and have a fantastic week.